Oh my gosh, you guys, you have no idea how many times I've been trying to do this video today, like for hours, and I haven't even edited it yet.
I had to record this so many times.
I'm like recording and then realizing it's all wrong and it's gonna take forever if I do it that way, and I start over and then record again and my microphone was on mute and
I am tired of making this stupid video. I'm so tired.
I'm not good at this whole video thing. Let's just leave it right there for now. What I'm trying to do is take you on a painting journey with me. I have painted this beautiful picture of yellow leaves and I want to share the process with you.
This one better work.
Hopefully you like leaves and nature and you're not like my husband who saw my work in progress and stared at it politely before he asked me what it was. And I said leaves, and he said, well, yeah, but it's just leaves. So that's what it is. I like the composition because it has all these cool little triangles hidden throughout. I thought it was neat. I still think it's neat. We just don't have the same artistic sensibilities. It's fine. So this image on the right is the progress I made after 30 minutes. You can probably see that I have pencil markings on here.
Watch the nosy and I'll show you where.
And I'm not very great at drawing, but I take a fancy carbon paper.
Swish! Carbon paper.
I print the image to be the same size as my canvas, and with the carbon paper in between, I just trace the image over. And that gives me a little color book guide. So here I am using burnt umber.
Swish! Grunbacher. Burnt umber.
And I'm trying to do an underpainting. I want to make the darks dark and the lights light and give it something other than white to show through when I'm putting other layers on. But I'm having problems
But we don't let that stop us, do we?
because I have dark, that's great. I can get a little lighter, awesome. Get a little lighter, awesome. And I couldn't really get it that much lighter without working really hard. And I wanted it to go that light, like super light, almost white. It's such a struggle. So instead of trying to labor over figuring out how to get this lighter and lighter and lighter, I just used more colors. Now you have the burnt umber.
Swish! Grunbacher. Burnt umber.
And I added burnt sienna.
Swish! Grunbacher. Burnt sienna.
This orange, and I have yellow ochre.
Swish! Grunbacher. Yellow ochre.
Now I'm thinning all of these paints with linseed oil from the hardware store.
Lighter with dilution by mixing boiled linseed oil from the hardware store. Not the stuff at the art place and their fancy schmancy high prices. Psh.
Because I haven't bought the fancy artist stuff, and I don't even know what the difference is because I've never used it. But there is no white paint on this canvas yet. Only pure colors and with
Using only linseed oil boiled from the hardware store.
one thing I was surprised by was that linseed oil mixed with just a little bit of paint,
More linseed oil boiled.
even in these very thin areas, were nearly dry the next day. I think that might be because burnt umber dries quickly. My sister had a different experience where hers was mixed with white, which takes 2 weeks to dry, and hers was not dry the next day. I was pleasantly surprised that mine was dry, and if it wasn't fully dry, it was like gummy.
Gummy? Like gummy bears?
I could paint on top of it, and I wasn't too worried about colors mixing together. Also, by mixing with oil, I had a lot of control over the paint and where it went, which surprised me. It was almost like watercolor, as opposed to really thick paint that you don't thin at all, and you just have to like put it down, and it doesn't always stay where you want it to go. It doesn't go into all the little cracks and crevices. I mean, it's really acted like watercolor. It just went into the lowest parts of it and didn't really float on the top like you would imagine watercolor would do. Now I'm working on the top layer. This is potentially the final layer, to start covering up underpainting. I actually started with dark green here. There's a lot of blue in it.
Psh, Winsor Newton cobalt blue hue.
More blue than yellow for sure.
Psh, Grunbacher cadmium yellow.
I thought it went well for the dark branches in the background. I also thinned it and added a little bit of yellow and covered some of these burnt umber shadows. Start with burnt umber, but I don't want it to end up being that dark. Then with that green, I added a whole bunch of white, and I probably added a little bit of blue too. And then I've got my main colors. Something that I really wanted to experiment with is letting the lines show and letting the underpainting through a little bit. See that stylistically in other people's artwork, and I think it looks really cool, but I haven't been brave enough to try it on my own yet, so this is going to be that attempt.
That picture I just showed you was by Cézanne. Make an artist's heart flutter.
And I really love the burnt sienna and this light blue. Those colors, they just look really good together. I made a note of that in my art journal.
Mind your own business, I'm writing in my journal.
So in an effort to lighten it up and cover some background, I made this cadmium yellow, cobalt blue, and titanium white. And I leaned it toward the yellow, and I applied it to a lot of the relatively dark areas of the background, though not all the darkest areas. Some parts I thinned with the linseed oil. You can see the differences here. Like, it's pretty thick here, but it's pretty thin here. Okay, and then I added some yellow to that green and white, and that gets me another type of green for the background. Starting to look better. The green is overtaking the burnt umber, and I'm also getting a little bit more free in application. Areas where I think the color is just almost exactly right, like right there, I put it on thick. And then areas where I don't think it's quite right, I'm putting it on thinner. I think that gives it more texture. It looks nice when there are multiple colors working together. Also, once again, I'm trying not to cover the lines.
Don't forget Cézanne. Wink, wink.
Also, I noted that it was really interesting that the more I cover the background, the more it looks like it needs to be covered. Like, it looked cool when it was just the underpainting, but it doesn't look so cool anymore. It looks kind of scrappy once the real paint gets in there. Next, I'm wanting to get a better green, bluish, brownish color here, which would go right in there. But I was having a hard time finding it because everything is so saturated on my palette. So I decided to mix what I called mud. And it was just all three primary colors, yellow, red, and blue together. And this is actually what it ended up looking like right there.
Psh, Grunbacher cadmium yellow. Psh, Grunbacher cadmium red. Psh. We've done this enough, right? Yeah.
I was just trying to get something muddy, something that would desaturate. If I go back and forth here, you can see that I actually thought it had a position where it belonged in the painting. But I also mixed it with green, this dark green right there. And that mud, it just toned down the green perfectly. I then also went back to this lighter yellowish green that was still on my palette, and I applied more of that. Well, I also lightened the green without adding any yellow, just a lot of white, and I got this lighter bluish green, which I wanted to replicate these highlights throughout. At this point, the background's almost finished, and I have a lot of mixed greens on my palette. I just kind of go a little bit bonkers and filling in the rest. This picture looks really different because it's my fault. I took the photo in funky light. But I like the colors, and I'm thinking that for now, my background is tentatively done. I might come back later once I've finished other areas, or I might not. It might be done. So I took my lightest green mixture and I added some red and some mud and some white. You remember what mud is, right? And I added it to my lightest green mixture that I still had on my palette from all my previous painting. I color matched these two leaves. I got it pretty close. It still wasn't quite what I was looking for the rest of these leaves, but I saw that this color was so similar to these blurry leaves here that I was able to use it down here. And I also used some of yesterday's greens that's still on my palette, not dry, to blend out the rest of these foreground leaves. And I think I like it. I like that it looks blurry without too much blending. Getting back to my effort to leave lines, it's really easy to overdo it. Here is like perfect example of what I'm going for. I don't have a steady hand, so I'm going to have to go back in and paint over that, and it's just not going to look as good. I can't do such a thin, etchy looking line with my huge paintbrush. Also, branches look kind of purple. I want to fix that as well. Let me show you how I did. To cover the branches, I mixed blue and white till it was the value I wanted. I added mud till the intensity was about right. When I was done painting these front areas, I added more mud to get the background areas. I can also show you what I ended up doing with the lines. Here you can see the line that I was able to keep, a lot of these ones here, and I painted this one back. Originally I had painted all the way around it and it just looked too soft. It looked like it was in the background. I took straight burnt umber.
What? No linseed oil?
I took burnt umber and I kind of very lightly tried to chip back in. I did one here, I did one here. Here I'm very purposefully trying to go but it just doesn't look the same. It's not quite right. I do like how it looks here though, where it creates sort of a webbing effect. That's all painted back in, because I had definitely lost it in the previous one. It's back. It's gone. It's back. This makes me want to consider a darker underpainting, because that's how you get this effect. A lot of areas my underpainting was way too light. For example, right here, you can see my pencil line, but I didn't have dark paint there. That's because I was using the yellow ochre and it was a little bit lighter than I would go next time. Also, one of the biggest things I learned about this, and it's so cool and it's like my favorite part of the painting, is these two leaves right here. There is no line separating them from the branch or from each other. I gave them a slight separation here from the background, and it creates this dimensionality that surprised me. It was a happy accident, but I learned so much from this. We've got these leaves that are in full focus. They've got lines around them. They've got detail on the leaf parts. They don't have as much mud mixed into their colors. And here you have leaves that don't have the lines all the way around them. They look further away. The colors are about the same. They don't look as far away as these blurs back here, or those blurs up there. So I'm able to create a foreground, a middle ground, and a background just by the way I use line and how much I blend things. Another point I will emphasize is that everything that I wanted our attention to be drawn to, not only is it slightly lighter, but there is less mud mixed into those colors. When I knew the color was going into the background, I would just mix a teeny bit more mud. That means that these leaves are slightly more intense, they're slightly more saturated than anything you see in the background, where everything just blurs together in that bokeh. That's it. That's me painting my yellow leaves, and I hope I recorded it right this time. I really do. I don't want to have to start over and do this again.